Well, it is a lovely Wednesday morning. Yesterday was the blizzard, and I recorded my hair-raising trip home through whiteouts and pretty intense gusts that were knocking big trucks off the road. It's beautiful this morning. It's clear. Well, there's a few scattered clouds around the edges of the basin here, but mostly clear. Lots of snow. It's cold. It's about 25 degrees outside this morning, but not as cold as it was a couple of weeks ago, so this is pretty lovely. It's actually really nice. And as I've been driving into town this morning, I had a couple of thoughts, totally unrelated to a blizzard. And I thought I'd share them, because that seems to be what I do these days. And the thoughts I had were about the relationship of the self-help movement and mental illness or mental health issues. A lot of times people don't care for the term mental illness. I don't think illness is a derogatory word, but that's probably my training and not necessarily someone else's interpretation. So, caveat there. I've known a lot of people who are involved in the self-help genre as writers, speakers, mentors, coaches, who have actually a lot of really good counsel to offer to people. They have a lot of really good advice to help people get some control over their life, to make better choices, to change their circumstances through better behavior. And that's actually really important to understand, because there are some common mental health concerns that are essentially behavioral in issue. One of those is depression. There's lots of things that can trigger depression, but the feelings that we experience can be altered by the habits we pursue. Doesn't mean that we won't be triggered, but it does mean that we do have some control over what happens. Exercise, diet, and sometimes seeing a doctor, because there's hormonal imbalances that can trigger depression, and it's good to go and talk to someone, because medication can help. And there are other concerns and issues that are not behavioral in nature. There are mental health concerns that are neurobiological, which means, essentially, that the structure of the brain does not function. I hate to use the word normal. I'm going to throw it out there because it's a commonly understood term to mean typical, right? But there really isn't any normal brains. I don't know. I think you could look at 1,000 brains and each brain would be functioning uniquely. But there is some neurobiology in some brains that simply does not function the way that we typically assume a human brain will function. And the counsel that is given in self-help books simply doesn't work because of the way the brain interprets language, interprets action, interprets the motives and actions of others. And I've been in situations where people who have a neurodivergent brain are made to feel like they're a failure somehow, as if their inability to function within that, whatever the self-help idea is, whatever is being sold in that particular speech or book or conference or retreat or whatever it is, as if their inability means they are unworthy somehow. It's what happens when a good idea moves from the realm of a tool to help you live your beliefs to a belief system in and of itself. And people methodology of success or health or whatever with religious fervor. And those who don't see a result from the actions simply aren't worshiping at the feet of whichever self-help guru they're listening to. They're just not worshiping well enough. And they need to be more devout. They need to be more faithful in their obedience to whatever the suggestions are. I just really struggle with this. I've seen it often enough, and it's made me frustrated often enough. It's been a common topic of discussion in my home with my husband and I. We have some neurodivergence in our family, and that's probably why I notice it more than I may have otherwise. I see the desire to have the promised impact of whatever the guru is selling. Usually it's money and health, or a combination in varying percentages of the two. Sometimes it's fame. Sometimes there's fame associated with it too, but I just can't think of anything worse than being rich and famous. I wouldn't mind being rich, but famous in our day and age, that would be miserable. It would be like the worst thing ever. Anyway, and I've seen the fallout of this tendency to treat a tool as the one true way to wealth, and anything that deviates, or any person who deviates from it or struggles with some of the tenets, as some kind of heretic, and a downplaying of their skills and beliefs. And I don't know necessarily what my point is, except I really think it's important for people to take any promise made by anyone with a little bit of a grain of salt. All self-help suggestions are made to offer you a tool for your toolbox to accomplish something that is important to you. And you can determine whether someone values you or values your money by how they treat you in your learning the skill associated with their self-help. Because every single person I know has varying levels of capacity to implement, to understand, and to practice a belief system. Sometimes these are neurobiological, sometimes they are related to time, sometimes they're related to existing financial resources, whatever the case may be. But if someone's offering of self-help comes with condemnation, if you aren't accomplishing it fast enough, and is making the accusation that if you just believed hard enough, this is so easy that anybody could do it, and if you're not doing it, it's because you're lazy kind of commentary, you know what? You don't need that kind of self-help, because that's not help. That's called bullying. And I see it in marketing. I see it in in videos that show up on Facebook and YouTube, little tiny, 15-second sound bites of some condemnation for why you have not attained success in this world. And it's crazy. The amount of stress and anxiety that can cause to a regular person, let alone a neurodivergent brain person, is phenomenal. Phenomenal. We understand the concept of accommodation when it comes to physical well-being and health. If someone needs a wheelchair, we don't condemn them for needing the wheelchair. We recognize they need a wheelchair to get around. If someone needs a hearing aid in order to hear a talk, we don't condemn them for needing a hearing aid. We just make sure that they have a hearing aid. If someone needs audio of a talk instead of just a written version of the talk. We ensure that they have audio so that they can hear and participate. We need to be careful in all of our sharing of ideas and thoughts and methods and skills and practices that we're not condemning someone who needs a mental accommodation in order to implement the thing that we think is so important. So much of our world is made up of sales. Man, if your sales tactic involves telling someone that they're not trying hard enough, that they just don't believe well enough, maybe you need to revisit your methods, because that's bullying. Sales should be an invitation to solve a problem, not a bully pulpit to make you big bucks. That's not what sales is about. The amount of money that you earn from something you have to offer should be commensurate with the value that you add to someone else's life. Anything else, you bullying someone into paying you money or to following you and, making you their guru that's just thievery. If you're making someone feel manipulated into getting what you have, that is not a good sales. That is not a good sales pitch. And that kind of offering will usually come back to bite you in the butt. And for those of you who may have someone offering you, salvation in a bottle or a box of pills or some kind of journaling method, I don't know. You'd be amazed at the stuff I've seen people bully others over. You've seen it too, so you're not amazed at all. But if you have someone who's treating you that way and you need time to implement, don't be afraid to take the time. One of the things I loved about my dad is anytime he would go to look at like a car or to anything he was going to purchase, anytime a salesman would start a pitch with, okay, this deal only lasts today, this is only good for the next 24 hours, my dad was out. As soon as someone put an arbitrary time limit on his capacity to think and consider and reason what he wanted to do and the decision he wanted to make, he no longer participated with that individual with the sales. He did not like to be manipulated, and I don't blame him. So I'm giving you permission. If someone is forcing you to make a decision based on their desire to meet a sales quota, that's their calendar they're thinking about, not your need. So don't be manipulated by self-help gurus who aren't helping you. Anyone who's offering you something that is supposed to be self-help should be based in service. And I know a lot of those. And it's pretty amazing to see that kind of individual at work, because they are serving. They're helping. They're offering something of value to people and allowing you to partake of it at the level and the speed at which you can. That's what you want. Don't kowtow to people who don't respect you, regardless of what your neurodivergence is or your time frame needs are. You don't need to be manipulated into somebody else's goals. That's them helping themselves instead of helping you help yourself. So, yeah. Don't be bullied today. Take everything with a grain of salt. Listen, ask, pray, do some internal thinking about it. You don't have to be rushed into anything.